June 6, 1944, 10 a.m. The air is thick with smoke and the acrid stench of gunpowder. The relentless roar of artillery and the screams of men echo across the blood-soaked sand. The location? Omaha Beach, Normandy, France. The Allied invasion of France, known as D-Day, is well underway. Corporal Heinrich Falk, a young Nazi soldier, crouches behind a crumbling concrete bunker. He can barely control the trembling of his hands as he attempts to reload his rifle. The sea behind him is filled with Allied landing boats, dropping wave after wave of soldiers onto the shore. As they storm the beach, his mind struggles to make sense of it all. How did it come to this? How did we not see it coming? A few days earlier, on June 3, 1944, he had been present in the German command bunker in nearby Pas-de-Calais, where the site of the impending Allied invasion was being debated. The room was dimly lit, the air heavy with tension from battle-hardened soldiers. Maps of the French coastline were spread across a large table marked with red and blue pins indicating potential Allied landing sites. Oberlieutenant Klaus Reinhardt, a seasoned officer with a cold, calculating mind and an even colder heart, paced up and down the room. His boots clicked against the concrete floor, his steps echoing like a metronome, counting down to an inevitable disaster. "They will land here," Reinhardt declared, stabbing a finger at the map. "Pas-de-Calais. This is the shortest crossing from England. It's the logical place to land." Heinrich shifted uncomfortably from his position, standing at attention near the door. He was barely 20 years old and looked it, but his eyes told the story of what he'd experienced during the war. He'd seen enough to know that logic is often irrelevant during the chaos of battle. "But what if they don't, sir?" he ventured cautiously. "What if they choose Normandy?" Reinhardt stopped pacing abruptly and fixed on Heinrich with his steely gaze. "Normandy? That's impossible. The beaches are too exposed and the terrain too difficult. The Allies are not fools, Falk. They'll come where we least expect them, but where we are most prepared." Heinrich nodded, though he was far from convinced. He'd heard the rumors. The Allies had been feeding false information, suggesting an attack on Calais instead of the actual location. And as it turns out, his doubts were extremely well-founded. In March 1944, the Allies had launched a disinformation campaign called Operation Fortitude North, with the intention of convincing the Germans that an Allied invasion of Normandy was imminent. The operation was a success. Valuable German troops and resources had been diverted away from France, setting the first dominoes in motion for the invasion of Normandy that would follow. Encouraged by the success of the operation, the Allies launched Operation Fortitude South. The operation used double agents like Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed Garbo, to feed false information to German intelligence. Garbo's network of fictional spies reported the buildup of FUSAG, reinforcing the illusion of an impending attack on Pas-de-Calais. FUSAG, short for the 1st United States Army Group, was an entirely fictional force, invented out of thin air by the Allied command in order to deceive the Germans as to where the Allies would land in France. This fictional force was supposedly commanded by General George S. Patton, a military commander respected and feared by the Germans. It was stationed in southeast England, complete with inflatable tanks, dummy landing craft, and fake radio traffic. As a result of intercepting these transmissions, the Germans swallowed the bait. In fact, just a few weeks before D-Day, in May 1944, the control room at the Allied High Command, London, had been a hive of activity. Maps and charts sprawled across every available surface, marked with arrows, battle lines, and the weight of history. At the center stood General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, his piercing gaze sweeping the room. Beside him, Lieutenant General Frederick E. Morgan, his trusted Deputy Chief of Staff, leaned in, murmuring updates. But the man who held the real secret to their strategy was just a step away. Colonel David Strangeways, the mastermind behind Operation Bodyguard, the most audacious deception in military history. Under its shadow, Fortitude North and Fortitude South were in motion, calculated illusions that, if successful, would shatter the German defenses. "Gentlemen," Eisenhower began in a calm, firm voice, "the success of Overlord hinges on our ability to mislead the enemy. If they suspect Normandy, we're finished.